Today, on our journey through sacred texts summarized, we explore one of the most evocative and enduring of these spiritual narratives. Ashvaghosha's The Life of the Buddha. Composed over 2 millennia ago, this poetic text recounts the extraordinary transformation of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, who left behind a realm of splendor to don the robes of a humble ascetic, forging a path to enlightenment that still resonates with millions around the globe. But before we dive into his story, take a moment to ask yourself, what unspoken truths might be quietly guiding your life choices? And what horizons could open if you dared to step beyond your familiar boundaries? Let these questions light the way as we discover how the Buddha's tale not only changed the course of history, but also continues to illuminate our daily struggles and aspirations. Our story begins in the ancient city of Kapilavastu, at the edge of the Himalayan foothills, a place where towering mountains cradle lush valleys and the wind whispers with untold mysteries. Here reigned King Suddhodana and Queen Maya, whose longing for a child was finally answered by a dream so vivid it transcended ordinary comprehension. One night, Queen Maya envisioned a radiant white elephant, gleaming with otherworldly light, entering her side. Court mystics interpreted this vision as a divine omen. They prophesied that the child about to be born would either rule the world as a mighty emperor or renounce it to become a spiritual savior. In time, Queen Maya gave birth to a son, Siddhartha, whose arrival was said to be accompanied by miraculous events. Legends claim that even as a newborn, Siddhartha took 7 deliberate steps. With each step, lotus flowers, symbols of purity emerging from the mud, sprang to life beneath his feet. According to some traditions, he pronounced words that echoed through the cosmos. "This is my final birth. I am here to liberate all beings." These miraculous signs carried an immense weight of expectation. Their grand symbolism reflected the magnitude of Siddhartha's destiny, one that would bridge the divide between earthly power and sacred renunciation, fleeting illusions and transcendent truth. As the boy grew, the court was often visited by sages and scholars who perceived an uncanny serenity in his gaze. Even his silence spoke volumes, a subtle indication of the vast reservoir of wisdom that was waiting to unfold. These early omens invite us to pause and reflect on our own beginnings. Sometimes, the seeds of our life's purpose are present from the very start, encoded in our dreams and earliest inspirations. What childhood moments or unexplained intuitions still linger in your memory, hinting at who you might become? The story of Siddhartha's auspicious birth reminds us that each life carries untold potential, waiting for the spark of recognition to ignite its flame. Despite the wondrous prophecies, Siddhartha's father, King Suddhodana, was determined to prevent his son from pursuing a spiritual path. Fearing the prophecy that his heir might abandon worldly power, he orchestrated a life of sumptuous indulgence within the palace walls. 3 separate palaces, one for each of the main seasons, were constructed to shield the young prince from discomfort or discontent. Lavish gardens bloomed with exotic flowers, tranquil pools dazzled with lotus blossoms, and musicians filled the corridors with melodies aimed at cultivating perpetual delight. In the eyes of the king, every conceivable pleasure became a tool to keep Siddhartha anchored to worldly life. Delicious banquets catered to the prince's every whim, while entertainers performed feats designed to captivate the mind and distract from deeper reflection. Archery, swordsmanship, and philosophy became part of the prince's rigorous training, ensuring he would one day rule competently over the kingdom. However, beneath the opulence and splendor, Siddhartha felt a subtle restlessness stirring. He saw shadows of dissatisfaction even in those who appeared to have everything. Fleeting amusements and momentary highs could not quiet the deeper questions pulsing within him. Why, in the midst of such luxury, did he still feel an intangible disquiet? This question resonates with many of us. How often do we chase external validations, titles, possessions, social recognition, only to discover that the answers to our deepest longings remain elusive? As Siddhartha entered adulthood, his father ramped up his efforts to entice him with life's pleasures. He arranged spectacular celebrations and ensured that Yasodhara, a beautiful and kind princess, became Siddhartha's wife. Yet none of these strategies could extinguish the prince's growing suspicion that there was more to life than palaces and pageantry. The seeds of a spiritual quest had already begun to stir, awaiting a moment of profound awakening. That moment arrived when Siddhartha finally ventured beyond the palace walls in his chariot, accompanied by his loyal charioteer, Channa. On the very first journey, Siddhartha came upon an old man so bent with age that he struggled to walk. This stark reality shattered the prince's sheltered worldview. "What is this?" he asked. Channa explained that aging comes for all, rendering once vigorous bodies frail and waning. On a second trip outside, Siddhartha encountered a man ravaged by disease, racked with unrelenting pain and discomfort. The prince was equally astonished, having never been exposed to illness. The third journey revealed something even more final, a funeral procession carrying a lifeless body whose family wailed in grief. Here was the undeniable proof of mortality, a fate that no wealth or status could evade. And then came the fourth encounter, which would change him forever. Amid the aging, sickness, and death, Siddhartha saw a wandering ascetic, a renunciate whose calm, radiant composure seemed to defy the misery that surrounded him. Unlike others who seemed consumed by suffering, this ascetic emitted a sense of peace that intrigued the prince. Could it be that there was a path beyond the turmoil of earthly life? This question tugged at Siddhartha's heart, igniting a flame of longing for a truth that transcended the constant change and sorrow he was suddenly so keenly aware of. In our own lives, these four encounters can be seen as metaphorical wake-up calls, moments that disrupt our complacency and push us to probe beneath the surface. Have you ever experienced an event that made you question everything you thought you knew? For many of us, personal loss, illness, or a brush with mortality can serve as a pivotal awakening, challenging us to seek answers beyond the boundaries of our usual certainties. If you are enjoying this video, please consider liking, subscribing, or sharing. It helps the channel immensely. Thank you. With the weight of these revelations pressing upon his heart, Siddhartha's restlessness grew into resolve. He could no longer bear the palace's protective illusions. In a scene that stands as a testament to human courage, he walked quietly into his sleeping wife's chamber, gazing upon Yasodhara and their newborn son, Rahula, one last time. His love for them was profound, yet an even more expansive love. A love for all suffering beings guided him forward. That night, Siddhartha slipped beyond the palace gates, discarding his fine garments for the simple robes of an itinerant seeker. He cut his long hair, a symbolic severance from the life of privilege he was leaving behind. History immortalizes this decisive act as the Great Renunciation. In an era when social and familial duties were paramount, Siddhartha's choice to abandon his royal inheritance was startling. Yet he was compelled by an unshakable conviction that a far deeper truth lay in waiting, and that discovering it could bring genuine relief to all who suffered. In contemplating this moment, we might ask ourselves, what comforts or attachments am I holding on to, and are they preventing me from answering my inner calling? The Great Renunciation wasn't an escapist move. Rather, it represented Siddhartha's unwavering commitment to find a path that could end suffering at its root. While few of us may need to abandon our lives so completely, his story challenges us to examine whether our habits, fears, or material pursuits keep us from living a more authentic and awakened existence. Once free from palace life, Siddhartha sought out revered teachers and immersed himself in ascetic disciplines. For 6 long years, he drove his body and mind to the brink, fasting to the point of near starvation and meditating for days in scorching heat or biting cold. His ribs protruded, and his body was so emaciated that at times he could barely stand. The conventional wisdom of the day claimed that the deepest spiritual insights could only be obtained through extreme austerities. Yet, despite these Herculean efforts, enlightenment remained elusive. One day, Siddhartha realized that self-mortification was simply another form of attachment, just as binding as a life of luxury. Rather than clarifying his mind, it had exhausted him and nearly destroyed his health. At this juncture, he recalled the calm focus he had once experienced spontaneously as a child, sitting under a tree during a ploughing festival. That feeling of serene balance became his guiding principle, inspiring him to abandon extreme asceticism and embrace moderation. This critical insight gave birth to the middle way, a path that avoids the extremes of indulgence and denial, offering a harmonious route towards spiritual liberation. Nourished by a gift of milk rice from a village girl, Siddhartha regained his strength. Determined to penetrate the ultimate truth, he seated himself beneath a Bodhi tree, vowing not to rise until enlightenment was achieved. Throughout the night, he was tormented by Mara, the personification of worldly temptations, fear, and self-doubt. Mara conjured terrifying armies, illusions of sensual desire, and whispered insidious doubts into the prince's ear. Yet, Siddhartha's resolve did not waver. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the eastern sky, Siddhartha's mind cut through the last veils of ignorance, revealing the true nature of reality. In that moment, he became the Buddha, the fully awakened one, having perceived the interwoven patterns of suffering and the way to transcend them. The story of that night under the Bodhi tree endures as a powerful reminder that genuine transformation often requires confronting our deepest fears and distortions. How might embracing the middle way in your life, avoiding both too much indulgence and too much denial, foster greater clarity and peace? Initially, the Buddha hesitated to teach. He wondered if the profundity of his realization could be conveyed through words. Nevertheless, recognizing humanity's collective need for guidance, he decided to share his insights. Traveling to Sarnath near Varanasi, he delivered what came to be known as the setting in motion of the Wheel of Dharma, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. This historic sermon introduced the Four Noble Truths, the cornerstone of his teaching. Life is marked by suffering, dukkha. Though joy and pleasure exist, they are impermanent and often overshadowed by sorrow, dissatisfaction, and change. Suffering arises from craving, our ceaseless desire for pleasure, avoidance of pain, and attachment to fleeting things. There is a cessation of suffering. Freedom becomes possible when we relinquish the compulsive grasping at what is ephemeral. The Eightfold Path leads to the end of suffering, an integrated approach to living that includes right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The Buddha's emphasis on practical application set him apart from many spiritual figures of his time. Rather than presenting an esoteric doctrine, he offered a systematic approach that people from all walks of life could follow. Over the next 45 years, he traversed northern India, humbly teaching kings, peasants, Brahmins, merchants, and outcasts alike. The spirit of his message, emphasizing compassion, moral conduct, and mindful awareness, became the unifying thread of a growing community called the Sangha. Within this diverse circle of followers, the Buddha used everyday language and vivid parables to convey profound truths, ensuring that anyone, regardless of birth or status, could grasp the essence of the path. Consider how our own daily actions, our words, our attitudes, our willingness to be present, shape our experience and ripple out to those around us. The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path remain as relevant now as they were in ancient India, offering a blueprint for navigating the complexities of modern life. By the time he reached the age of 80, the Buddha had created a profound and far-reaching spiritual legacy. Yet he consistently reminded his disciples of a central tenet: all compounded phenomena are impermanent. After eating food that was likely spoiled, he fell seriously ill. Even in his final hours, lying between two graceful sal trees in bloom, he continued to teach and console his grieving companions, urging them to place their faith not in his physical form, but in the Dharma itself. As night approached, he entered parinirvana, a state of final release beyond the cycles of birth and death. His last words, spoken with utmost compassion, echoed the central message of his life. All phenomena are transient. Strive on with mindfulness. These words serve as a gentle yet insistent reminder that while we cannot control the changing tides of life, we can cultivate awareness and wisdom in how we respond to them. In commemorating the Buddha's passing, his followers gathered his relics, building stupas and monasteries that would become centers of learning and devotion. Over centuries, the Buddha's teachings spread far beyond the Indian subcontinent, extending into Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, China, Tibet, Japan, and ultimately across the entire planet. Why do these teachings continue to resonate? Perhaps it is because they address timeless human concerns: how to live meaningfully, how to face uncertainty with courage, and how to cultivate compassion in a world rife with conflict. The story of the Buddha transcends mere biography. It shines a light on universal themes that remain deeply relevant to our own lives. Embrace impermanence. We often resist change, clinging to the illusion of permanence. The Buddha's life journey, marked by losses, renunciations, and eventual enlightenment, encourages us to see that everything is in flux. The recognition of impermanence need not lead to despair. Rather, it can free us from the fear of change. Seek the middle way. Siddhartha's turn away from both opulence and extreme asceticism highlights the power of balance. Excess in any form, be it overindulgence or self-punishment, can trap us. Recognizing a moderate path can bring emotional equilibrium and wisdom to our daily lives. Confront inner demons. The cosmic battle under the Bodhi tree is ultimately a struggle against internal illusions, fear, temptation, and self-doubt. Each of us, at some point, must face the subtle voices that undermine our sense of worth and clarity. What if the darkest battles we fight are often the doorways to profound personal growth? Cultivate compassion for all beings. Over the decades, the Buddha tirelessly shared his insights with people from every social stratum. Such openness and inclusivity point us toward compassion, urging us to see beyond surface distinctions and to recognize a shared humanity. These themes are neither abstract doctrines nor outdated tropes. They speak to the deepest rhythms of human existence. Which of these resonates with you most powerfully? Could practicing compassion, for example, dissolve barriers in your relationships or infuse your work with a renewed sense of purpose? In the grand tapestry of human history, the life of the Buddha stands as an enduring testament to our innate capacity for awakening. From a prince shielded by privilege to a wanderer who braved the wilderness of both body and mind, the Buddha's journey reminds us that enlightenment is not the domain of the extraordinary few. It lies within reach of each sincere seeker. His path urges us to question complacency and embrace change, to recognize that suffering can be a profound teacher rather than an insurmountable obstacle. It calls us to walk the middle way, avoiding the pitfalls of too much and too little. Perhaps most of all, it compels us to confront our fears and illusions with a courageous heart and a steady mind. As we part ways from this exploration, take a moment to consider: what small but significant step can you take today to draw closer to your own awakening? It might be as simple as 5 minutes of mindful breathing, an act of kindness, or a decision to let go of a limiting belief. In a world filled with noise and complexity, the quiet power of mindfulness and compassion can transform not just our personal experience, but also the communities and environments we inhabit. Thank you for joining this extended journey through the life of the Buddha. May these insights serve as lanterns, illuminating your path toward greater peace, empathy, and self-understanding. And always remember, true change often begins with a single intentional step into the unknown.